Some of what we will describe to you today involves features and functionality that are coming soon, and therefore this disclaimer, because obviously schedules can change. So the topic that I'm going to be discussing is Avalanche Connect Data Hub functionality embedded into a Cloud Data Analytics platform. My name is Louis Carr. I'm the Senior Director for Product Marketing at Actian, and I'm afraid that due to some family situations, Greg Coates, our Director for Product Management and Data Integration, cannot be with us. So I will be presenting this in its entirety to you. So I'm going to really go through two really major topics today. The first is really about looking at the existing architectures, technologies involved with data integration, management, and analytics that are being leveraged and moved to the cloud, and how they must be adjusted based on the requirements in the cloud. And the requirements for who is really the key. And that is that this isn't about the requirements for IT. This is about the requirements for the actual business side of the house, the business users, the power users, the data analysts of all stripes and types, data engineers, data scientists, and in many cases, even transactional workers that are end users. So we need to look at, what are the technologies and the architectures behind those technologies, and then how they manifest themselves as products in the on-premise environment, to look at how they're being transitioned, migrated to the environment in the cloud. So there's three key trends that we see in data integration as we move into the cloud era. The cloud introduces new data silos as one of them. The second is convergence of extract, load, transform, and extract, transform, load platforms. That is the convergence of the platforms that are handling the actual data integration. And both of these need to be looked at from the perspective, again, of who is the end user. And in this case, we're really looking at the end user being the business user, and the need going forward for them to have a direct access to the actual data that they need to analyze. So there's no longer a disintermediation. I know I used a big term, but that's really what we're trying to look at here. So why is this important? Well, the fact of the matter is that Gartner says that organizations are struggling to extract real-time insights from their data analytics. And 80% of the time, this is resulting in most of their time being spent on data prep and quality, not on the insights, right? And the reason for this is there's hurdles that the actual power users are seeing in being able to get to the data. And we're going to talk about that more later. But effectively, it boils down into two things that the analysts are seeing, which are in points 2 and 3 here. The second point, data silos. Well, let's look at it this way. Everyone thinks of the cloud as open and extensible, but the fact of the matter is that it has really become a new set of silos, right? You've got the public cloud, three big public cloud vendors of Amazon, Google, and Microsoft Azure. Everybody else is a distant fourth, whether you're talking about Alibaba or some of the other public clouds that are regional, or you're talking about the global service providers like, let's say, a Verizon, a Deutsche Telekom, NTT, etc., which are largely involved in private clouds. The fact of the matter is nobody has a single cloud, so they're not on a single silo. They're across multiple clouds. This is why we call it multi-cloud. Additionally, it's not as if all of that on-premise software has gone away. There, right? You still have on-premise data centers. And then above that, in both cases, you have applications. In the case of the data centers and on-premise, you have traditional applications, Siebel, PeopleSoft, Oracle e-Business Suite, SAP Financials, you name it. There's plenty of applications out there, including all the vertical ones, right? And now you have increasingly a new set of integrated, for that matter, in some ways, monolithic applications that are SaaS. And they might be enterprise-wide, but they're really by department, right? So Salesforce.com or Marketo if it's marketing, or Zendesk if it's service and support, or ServiceNow if it's IT, and the list goes on. And the point is, all of these are becoming new silos for data. And depending upon which department you're in, you may be, if I'm marketing, I'm only focused on Marketo. I'm focused on Marketo. Or if you're in sales, then maybe it's Salesforce.com, et cetera. And so if you're an analyst or an operations person that's analyzing your data in any of these departments, you largely are focused on or have access to only the data coming out of that set of applications and associated data repositories. And what you really want to be able to do, if you're a cross-functional team, which is in the third one, is to be able to access data in other organizations, not just your own data. And even for your own data, if you're trying to access large sets of historical data, or you're trying to combine it with external data, maybe it's from applications, mobile applications, or IoT, largely that means that you have to rely on IT. And so if you're trying to get a common view of data across multiple organizations, it almost always means that you're having to rely on IT. So, sorry, I keep turning aside. My camera's away from where the click is for the monitor. But essentially, you want to be able to bring that data into a single repository, or at least a single view. Forget about the repository a minute. The point is bringing it into a single view. And oftentimes that's labeled as a set of concepts, a data hub. Well, a data hub is really an architecture that's focused on bringing data into a certain transit point. And a data hub, to do that, isn't necessarily a set of technologies. And even when it is a set of technologies, it's largely productized in something traditionally or historically, such as, let's say, Informatica, or for that matter, Data Connect, our own equivalent of Informatica. It could be a cloud service only. There's some competitors to that are cloud service only. In our case, we do either one. But what you don't see that data hub functionality in are the actual repositories. So data lakes and data warehouses, you don't see it in there, which is frustrating because in particular for a data warehouse, we see that as the place of the single source of truth for your systems of record, for your systems of engagement. You see that as where all of the data might be located that allows you to converse, get insights against your corporate language. And all of this is really done around, in particular, especially if you're trying to make decisions in real time, around your operational data sources. Through your real time or near real time, it's in the eye of the beholders, analytics platform. And so it's really important to understand, this data hub concept before we talk about what you would do next. So what would we do next? Well, what we want to do is we want to be able to converge a lot of this into a single environment. That is, take the best of each of these, bring it together from a standpoint of the requirements for what? For that power user, for that business user, where they are no longer disintermediated by IT. Well, so who does that? Well, it can be done first by looking at the data hub functionality, right? The data hub functionality is still important because now I have even more disparate and diverse data sources. Now I need to worry about not just the ETL from a batch, but also ELT, or and sometimes ETL, but pulling in data from a streaming mode where maybe I'm doing the actual preparation and processing of data at the destination rather than the source, which means that I've, between these two different speeds and modes of data coming in, between it being disparate and diverse sources, I've upped the level of requirement for data preparation and quality, which is really bad in some sense, because think about what we said earlier, that Gartner says 80% of your time is already spent on that. You can't get much worse than that and not have anything in the way of solid analytics. And so what happens is, in many cases, the business users, the power users, are going off directly point to point to a certain data set, bring it directly into their tool, whether that be, if it's a business analyst, Power BI or Cognos or Tableau or Click or Looker or whatever that is, or it's to a data scientist or engineer and they're pulling it into Data Robot, or they're home growing their own thing with TensorFlow or what have you. And And then add to that aside from that sort of tool, everyone out there that's a business user uses some sort of spreadsheets, and those are their own silo. So taking from all those silos directly point to point of the data is not the way to build a common picture. It's not the way to get a multifunctional team to work together. So where are the data sources that begin to try to build a common unified view? Well, they're in two places that are moving and migrating to the cloud. And by the way, if you look online on Actian.com under Lewis Carr in the blog section, you'll find a whole series where I compare and contrast these. I'm not going to be able to go through it in as much detail here. But suffice it to say that there is this opportunity to pull data together, both historically into the data warehouse, particularly in enterprise environments. There's almost invariably always a data warehouse. And then recently, particularly in the last 10, 15 years, most organizations have in parallel built up a data lake. And there's some differences between the two. Again, if you look at the blogs that I have, you can compare and contrast those. But the key thing to understand, and for the, I'll cut to the chase here. Well, what we're looking at is how do I take the core functionality in a data warehouse that's really focused on operational workloads, that is trying to make decisions in real time or to support decisions being made in real time by those key business users, how to make the decisions that are going to provide you with the changes for business agility, right? And what's necessary often there, if you're an analyst for underwriting loans or for deciding what products to upsell and cross-sell or whatever the case may be, generally you're doing your own ad hoc analytics. And to do that, you're probably looking at often billions of rows of records of data, and you've got to do sub-second SQL queries. The average size data set for this is around 25 to 30 terabytes, that range. Historically, that's been structured data, but increasingly that's changing, where it's often a combination of structured data and semi-structured data. And you have to be flexible in the deployment of that based on your regulations and guidelines and who has data stewardship, ownership, et cetera. So flexible deployment is another issue, and then also cost for flexible deployment. Point is, you want all that from a data warehouse, but you also need some of the things that we find in a data lake, right? So the ability to take what's been done to build up use of advanced analytics, the use of Spark, for example, for streaming data, the use of web services, APIs to pull in data, largely of a semi-structured nature. A lot of the elements of what you find in a data lake have to be moved to that data warehouse. And the whole point of doing this is what? Well, it's really to avoid the data silos. You want to make sure that you can get real-time insights based on that complete picture. So what you see for that complete picture is really simple. It's the power users, they still have to be able to use their existing visualization and reporting tools as we just described, but now operating on a unified set of data with a single point of view in the cloud where they effectively, in a virtual format, that is, you're not disturbing the actual original data sources, and you're not looking at them directly in the enterprise data warehouse anymore, which was really inflexible in terms of its use, its deployment, et cetera, and its costs. Now I can look at it out in the cloud, all of those different data sources as a unified view. That's the way that all of these different team members can work together better. So how are we going to deal with this? What are we going to do at Actian to support this? Well, it's very simple. We're building in the features and functionality that one gets outside of a data warehouse or outside of a data lake, generally from one of these data integration platforms like Data Connect or Informatica or what have you, directly built into the cloud data warehouse and built in as a self-service tool that's going to pull from all of those different disparate apps, from web services through web service APIs, from any of the traditional sources such as databases. And the whole point here again is that I want to make sure I have zero coding, right? We don't want to replace IT with a bunch of developers. We really want this to be just about business users that are knowledgeable, have knowledge of things like SQL, are computer fluent so that they can use these drag and drop menus appropriately. But they can pull in data that they normally would look at in a silo on a spreadsheet, from their desktop or from a single web service, bring all that data in conjunction in combination with what they would get from their enterprise data warehouse. All right. And when we talk about the data lake functionality, which used to be, if it was Hadoop, for example, it would have been sitting on HDFS. Now all of that's been translated to what repositories? Well, the ones in the public clouds, for example, such as S3, ADLS, and Google Cloud. Of course, in a private cloud, it's some other sort of object store. But I want to be able to get to all of the data, bring it into that common repository directly, work on that data there. And I want to do it in a way where I'm not just dealing with that traditional data, but I also want to bring in data that might be from streaming devices, click streams, IoT, log files, any sort of event-driven data. And I want to be able to allow that end user to do it themselves. So let's talk a bit about the features that enable us to do that with AvalancheConnect. So again, this is the only cloud data warehouse out there with the integration functionality built in that is targeting. Let me be specific. It's the combination that's built in targeting these power users, the business users. And what we've done is we've essentially taken all the functionality in Data Connect and all of the functionality in Data Flow, plus new functionality that we've built to deal with desktop loaders, to deal with for the spreadsheets and other delimited types of files, Parquet files. The ability to bring in data through a JSON API, all of that we brought it together into a single platform and then rolled it into Avalanche. And because it's rolled into Avalanche, it's not an add-on product. Anything that you get as a customer of Avalanche, you get all that AvalancheConnect functionality, and you're only paying for what you use with it. So it's not like you're buying a license subscription separate for a data integration product, and you only pay for it at runtime. All right. So we're trying to keep this very simple as a service, not just for the analytics, but the built-in data integration capabilities as well. And we're trying to enable you not just to do what you expect with most cloud data warehouses. They're simply migrating the same type of data that you would find in your enterprise data warehouse. But again, combine that with all of these different other types of data, merge it together, and then allow you to create and customize schema-based tables that deal with that unified data set. So once you've been able to break down these siloed walls, you'd have to think about it from the standpoint of what's different in the silos before versus now. And one of the key differences are these web service APIs, right? So you want to really be able to look at the fact that every application built now uses a web service API. Every application now tends to have semi-structured data, largely in a JSON format, though your legacy types of applications such as a PeopleSoft or Siebel or JD Edwards or whatever the application may be, they have an analog structure for the data, XML, and an analog for the protocol to move it around, SOAP in the case of the pairing with XML. You're also going to need to worry about other new data sets that are streaming through something like Kafka, for example. So the point here is to basically allow, again, for that merging of those data sets. Once you've figured out what you would like to merge, then you need to be concerned with the automation and the scaling of that. In other words, creating the data pipelines, right? Because the data is going to flow in. I need to bring it from these different points. Once I've set up all the different points and the type of data that's going to be used to flow into a given data warehouse, I want to set this up in a way where it's reusable, and it's reusable, again, without IT involved for what we're calling a do-it-yourself fashion. Once I figured all that out, I don't want to figure it out from scratch. Again, I don't want IT involved. So what we've done here is we've got these set of pre-configured or pre-built loading and orchestration templates for all of the major SaaS apps that are out there, as well as the legacy ones. And then you can use this set, mix and match them as you see fit to customize for your own hybrid workflow. Then you can set up, once it's configured, schedule if it's batch mode, along with scheduling or modulating, throttling, whatever is coming through streaming, and then monitor that combination all through the same tool that's built into Avalanche. So that takes care of bringing in the diverse and disparate data sets. But as we said before with the Gartner points, that 80% of the time is spent on not just prep, but prep where you're qualifying the data, trying to get rid of a lot of the data that's dirty. And a huge portion of the data is dirty. What do we mean by dirty? There's duplicates. Some of the data is corrupted or inaccurate. And what you want to be able to do is figure that out during the setup process, and then set up a way to test as you're bringing in data in an automated fashion to make sure that it's valid data, to make sure you're not missing data. And so this is a set of features and functionality that are, and I should have put this on the slide, are coming soon in the next 2 quarters. That's where you'll see the data in the next 2 quarters coming through. Okay, so if you've set this up and you want to be able to monitor it, what do you want to monitor? You want to be able to capture any errors or where corrections are being made. That is, your exception handling is working properly. And then you want to be able to dashboard and log all of the history of this. And all of that, again, is available directly from this tool. So that gives you some of the background on, exactly what we see of the need to begin to converge a lot of the features and functionality that you find make sure the slide catches up, the features and functionality that you're going to find in a data lake, a data warehouse, a data hub, and then allow you to, within that same tool set, I neglected to say this, and you'll see this more in some of the later presentations after this, because again, this is the opening to the modernized data integration track. There's going to be several other sessions in this track that are going to delve in more detail, things like that new set of features and functionalities on data quality. You're going to hear that in the next session right after this one in this track. But you can also go after the conference or in later sessions and look at the way the set of features and functionality are built out from a standpoint of the operational analytics. So let's take, for example, if I were to look at operational analytics for one of the leading data warehouses out there, Snowflake. The fact of the matter is it's a really good platform. We're better, we can prove it, but we always talk about proving we're better based on performance. And that hasn't changed. If you look at any of the latest third-party benchmarks, for example, from GigaOM, and you probably heard some of that in some of the other sessions or the keynotes. But probably even more important as a business user isn't just the performance, but it's the ability to get to all of that data. And right now, again, with any of the current data warehouses out there on the market that are supposedly leading, getting to that data requires you to get almost into code, or definitely get into code, particularly if you're dealing with JSON data. It's not easy to get data from sources other than those that you traditionally would get data from. And so Snowflake has had to resort to working with third parties because they've never had their own data integration tools as we have had. So they've done a great partnership with Informatica, but that means that you've got an integration specialist involved, because that's typically what you get if you're going to use Informatica or the equivalent types of products. So you're back to being disintermediated if you're the business user. You may also, because of these new sources, have to bring in a data analyst. And you, as a business analyst, are therefore relying on them to use just your set of tools. And in parallel to you, the data scientist is relying on them to use their own set of tools as well. And oftentimes they're going point to point to that data and not through the data warehouse. What you really want to see is that all of these members of this multifunctional team are able to come together and work on a single platform. So it's a cross-functional team that is dealing with a single platform a single platform, meaning it's unifying data from all these disparate and diverse sources, and it's doing it in a way where all those users have a common view of the data, right? And that's the key takeaway we want you to get from this session. Changing the how, why, where, and when of data preparation is a critical part of data quality and ultimately the speed of insight, productivity, and improved outcomes for analytics, right? That's how you change that 80% of your time is on the data preparation and quality to the flip of it, right? And so to do that, this is a single tool to do it, which is, you can try out for yourself. For example, we just announced recently, and as you could see from the keynotes, you could try it out on the Google Marketplace. When you try out the analytics tool, Avalanche on the Google Marketplace, that enables you at the same time to try out the front-end AvalancheConnect features such that a business analyst could directly go in and try that. And from that same environment, be able to go in and use their same tool. So if it's a business analyst, they're able to use Click, Tableau, Looker, you name it. If there are a data scientist, they can use any of their data science tools. And so all of that really means that they get faster insights and better outcomes. So that's the session, the first session in the Modernize Your Data Integration. The next session coming up is going to be on profiling data quality. After that, you're going to have a session that will be on doing a better job of connecting in all the disparate databases using a microservice backend as a service. After that, there's going to be actually a session where you can see the entire tool used, or you can hear about the application of all of this into insurance use cases. The fact of the matter is there's going to be a lot more sessions that you might want to consider looking at. But as far as this session is concerned, thank you so much for your time.